Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lynn. If not, welcome back. For today's video, we're going to be talking about these giant prop tubes that I filmed a couple months back. They are extremely rooted and I cannot procrastinate any further because they're drying out. So if you're interested to know my thoughts and recommendations for how to use these giant prop tubes, keep on watching. Before I start with these tubes though, I just wanted to say Happy New Year. I don't know if this video is coming out on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. Whatever it is, I hope you had a great party with your friends, with your family, or even by yourself. I usually spend New Year's Eve pretty quiet. And I hope that you had time to say goodbye to 2025. And I wish you the very best in 2026 and I hope you achieve everything that you want to achieve in 2026. So if you haven't watched my original video talking about these giant prop tubes that I bought off of Amazon to try, go watch that video because in that video I show you how I prop all of my Hoyas, what I put in all of these different tubes, the different substrates that I wanted to test out with the different cuttings that I have here. And a lot of them have rooted out, not all of them have rooted out, but a lot of them have rooted out. And I think this experiment has gone on for about almost 2 months now. And as you can see, the roots are very, very extensive and this tube has been drying out like crazy recently and I cannot procrastinate any longer. I understand from our community page that a lot of you have voted, and thank you so much for participating by the way, that a lot of you have voted for like my top 10 recommendations for Hoyas to get from the lowest price to the highest price, and I will get to that video eventually. That video will come out in January. But for today, we really need to unpot a lot of these propagations that I made for the giant prop tube experiment. So this first Hoya here, if you don't recognize it, this is a Hoya Clemenceorum Black Splash. So it has black veins and silver splashing. It has extremely velvety and hard cardboard-like leaves. This is a beautiful Hoya to collect if you're interested in Clemenceorums or ancient-looking, well, crusty, ancient-looking like Hoyas. So this is a great one to collect. But that's it. In this first tube, I had only full fluval in here, so no perlite, no mix of substrates. This is just pure fluval. And I can tell you that this Hoya rooted the fastest. And if you can see over here, there's even a tiny little new growth that I'm going to be very careful with when I take this Hoya out of its prop tube. This is the second Hoya that I rooted in these giant prop tubes, and this is a mix of fluval and perlite. This is a Hoya Germany Splash. It has amazing leaves, very nice veination and nice splashing. Highly recommend this Hoya. Not the fastest grower, but a very beautiful grower. So this one rooted second. So the Clemenceorum in full fluval rooted the first. This one rooted the second. But as you can see, they both rooted really nicely. And I would highly recommend either of these substrates for the propagation tubes. Like if you want to cut some costs and make some perlite into your fluval, this was a pretty pleasant experience trying to load the substrate into the tube. So go watch my original video if you want to check that out. But yeah, I think this is a great substitute for full fluval, but I have to say the full fluval did root a lot faster. Again, is this a perfect experiment? No, because a perfect experiment would probably be having the exact same plant in 2 different substrates, but I didn't want to cut my plants that many times. So take what you will. The point is, fluval or fluval perlite are going to work great in these giant prop tubes, and in both cases, they're going to root really well. The third Hoya we're going to be talking about is the one that I rooted in pure LECA. And as you can see from this tube, absolutely zero roots. It is not my first time rooting something in LECA, actually. I root a lot of my things in just pure LECA and water, and they have rooted out just fine. But for some reason, this hasn't rooted out at all in the last 2 months. So I'm not going to tell you that LECA rooting doesn't work because I have done it successfully many times. But it does appear to be a lot slower compared to fluval and fluval mixed perlite, which I'm not surprised by because those are my preferred rooting mediums. But yeah, if you want to root your Hoyas by just LECA and water, you can. Just know that it will probably be slower than rooting them out in fluval and fluval perlite. Again, this is a Hoya carnosa freckle, so it's not supposed to be a slower grower than the Clemenceorum and the Germany Splash, but this is rooting out the slowest right now. So that's very fascinating and interesting for me. The very last Hoya that we tried out is perlite. So I didn't root this Hoya out in the giant prop tube because the cutting was so tiny, it felt really dumb. So I took one of the regular size tubes, and I'm going to take the giant prop tube so you can see the size comparison. So this is a regular size tube that you would get from most sellers, and this is a giant prop tube that I'm testing out. So I rooted this out in a regular size tube with pure perlite, and it's going to be really hard to see, but there are roots in this tiny tube, and it did root out pretty nicely for me. I would say this rooted out maybe about the same time as the fluval perlite, like not too different, but this one also rooted out really nicely. However, if you've watched my original video, you would know that trying to put perlite into these tiny tubes was an absolute pain in the butt. It was very dusty. I did not enjoy the process at all. So I don't think I will be repeating this particular substrate anytime soon in my practice, because I don't like dealing with perlite when it's so dusty indoors. My preference is definitely for the fluval and the fluval perlite mix, because mixing the perlite in the fluval didn't make it like quite as dusty. So I can definitely tolerate that, but the pure perlite was just way too much for me. However, if you want to save money and you don't want to use perlite, and you don't want to use fluval, the perlite works perfectly just fine. So here are the conclusions, because I don't want to keep you here for too long if you're just here to find out the results of the experiment and you don't want to stay for the repotting. Here are the conclusions of my experiment. Fluval and fluval perlite are probably the best substrates to use in these giant prop tubes. They're very easy to load, it's very easy to manage, and it's not very dusty. So I would highly recommend using these giant prop tubes with fluval or fluval perlite. You can also just add regular water in here and it would work just fine. Trying to load LECA balls into these giant prop tubes was really challenging. I wouldn't recommend trying to root out your plants in LECA this way, unless you buy LECA clay balls that are of a much smaller size. It's going to be really hard. So I will not recommend rooting out your Hoyas using these giant prop tubes with LECA. I mean, not just for the fact that it's rooting out the slowest, it's also extremely hard for you to squeeze LECA balls into these tubes, like around the stem of the plant. I think if you want to root it out with LECA, like you're really adamant about doing it with LECA, make sure you get smaller LECA balls that are much more uniform in size. Otherwise, I think it's going to be really hard to do. A really good alternative to this would be to just use pond. But again, pond is expensive, it's hard to get, and unless you have like your own pond mix, I think it's probably too expensive to use in these tubes. However, if you have your own pond mix, or like you have a local seller who does their own pond mix, I think pond would work beautifully in these giant prop tubes. And then last but not least, the perlite. You can, I guess, use perlite in these giant prop tubes for sure. It's going to root out really nicely for you, just like the fluval perlite and just like the fluval. It's just really dusty and it's not my preference, and it was really hard to get the perlite into these tubes. So those are my thoughts about the substrate. Now I want to talk about the actual tube. So these tubes are amazing. I highly recommend using them for your propagation experiments. They don't take up quite as much volume as a cup. Like if you try to fill a cup with fluval for a really long stem, it's going to take up so much more fluval. It's going to cost so much more than like just trying to put substrate into a tall skinny tube. So I think these giant propagation tubes are a godsend. I think they're amazing for like rooting out your Hoyas with a lot less substrate. That's the first thing, volume. The second thing is these tubes have like a really nice opening on the top of the lid. So you don't have to keep opening up this lid to add water into the tubes. In fact, all you have to do is just take a squeeze bottle and just squeeze directly over the opening up here, and the water trickles in just fine. At the same time, the opening is not so big that it's evaporating like crazy. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, if you don't already know, I rooted out all of these in ambient conditions. So they were not in a prop box, they were just sitting on a shelf under grow lights. And these lids kept the tubes really well hydrated for like a really long time. So I didn't have to keep adding water to these tubes. I probably watered them like once every, I want to say about 10 to 14 days. They don't really dry out that much. Pros of these giant prop tubes: A, they're very easy to manage. It's a very nice volume and size for like a long skinny cutting. They are great for adding substrate in. It's really nice to root in them. Not just that, the lid makes it very easy to water, because I don't know if you've tried this before, but if you root a Hoya in substrate in a tube and you try to open up this lid to water it, you're going to pull the plant out. And then every time you're going to have to like try to shove it back in. Every time you do that, you're breaking micro roots that are like baby roots that are slowly growing along the stem, and I don't like that. This tube, however, has a big enough aperture at the top that lets you water it, so you don't even have to open this tube at all. The moment you put it in, it's set. You just water it off the top of the tube. So these giant tubes have been a joy to use. They're very easy to use. They're big enough that you can add different substrate in them. They're very easy to water, and because of the lid, it doesn't dry out quickly in ambient conditions, so you don't even have to baby them that much. I really do enjoy these tubes, and I would highly recommend using them for your next propagation experiment or project. I guess a different question you would ask me is, can I skip these giant propagation tubes because they're more expensive, and can I just use the smaller regular tubes instead? The answer is yes. You can definitely add all of these substrates into these smaller tubes and root out your Hoyas using these smaller tubes for sure, but I do have some cons for you. The first con is, I don't know if you can see that, but the top of this tube has a lid, and that hole is very, very small. It's extremely hard to water this Hoya, especially this prop. It was extremely hard for me to water this prop because you would have to open up this lid, and every time you open up this lid, you're going to pull that prop a little bit out of the tube, and you have to push it gently back in again. I find this to be very finicky, and I will not recommend trying to add substrate into these floral tubes. What I enjoy these floral tubes the most are for water propping. So like just adding water, it's great. It works really well as a water prop tube. But like with substrate, I find it to be very finicky. Not just that, because the volume is really small, they do tend to dry out a lot faster compared to these bigger giant prop tubes, and you do have to baby them a lot more than the giant prop tubes. Can you use these? Yes. Will I recommend using them with substrate instead of water? No, because it's very finicky, it dries out really quickly, and it's very hard to get the substrate in there and also to water it. So those are my pros and cons with the use of these giant prop tubes. I really love them. I will continue using them. If you are not interested in the next part, which is the repotting of all of these things, then you can skip on ahead, but at least you learned something new today. Alright, if you're still here, you're interested in repotting things. So we're going to be unpotting all of these Hoyas and transferring them to something more permanent. This is probably the only Hoya that we will not be messing with today because it has no roots, basically. It has no roots. So we're not going to be messing with this Hoya. But the other three are in desperate need of a new home because they're just outgrowing their prop tubes. So if you're wondering how to like unpot these plants from the giant prop tube, all you have to do is lift up the rubber lid. And then I like to make sure before I unpot my Hoyas from any propagation vessel that I give it some moisture ahead of time so that it's not completely dry. I find that the roots are a lot more supple when they're a little bit wet, and you don't tend to break as many roots when you're doing this that way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to push up on the lid, and then we're going to grab it by the top and not like break the new growth, hopefully. And we're just going to do a gentle push from the bottom and a pull from the top to try to unpot this Hoya from the tube. And this plastic is very sturdy, but it has give. It's a very sturdy plastic with some give, so it really helps with unpotting things. And we have our Hoya right here. The roots are looking amazing. They are very well established. I'm very pleased with this. So all you have to do now, so you've already released the Hoya from its propagation tube. You've massaged it out. The roots are amazing. Check for pests. There are no pests. And I've already washed off as much fluval and perlite as I can from the roots. Do you need to get this super clean before you pot it in soil or in semi-hydro? No. I have found that there's no reason to traumatize the roots that way. The plant grows just fine with a little bit of fluval or perlite on its roots in semi-hydro or even in soil. All you have to do now is to cut the top of the tube to release the plant. Cut the top of the rubber lid to release the plant, not the tube. So I like to do this with like a pair of cuticle scissors because they're smaller and they have a finer tip, so it's easier to maneuver around the plant. And then once you're through, all you have to do is pull the lid apart, and now you have your plant. Isn't propagation so fun? I love it. And now you might be asking me like, oh my god, what am I going to do with this tube then? Honestly, you can continue to reuse this tube. All you have to do is rinse it out, and you can put like any kind of aeroid propagations in here. You can continue to put like Hoya propagations in here too. It will work just fine without the lid, and that's probably what I will continue using it for. However, without the lid though, it's probably going to dry out a lot more. So I'm thinking a good way to hack this would be to not throw this lid away. You can kind of like slip a new plant onto this and then just like slap it back on. I think it will work just fine. So for this Hoya, I will be putting it back into semi-hydro because that's my favorite medium. So for this Hoya Germany Splash, I will be putting it back into semi-hydro because my preference is for semi-hydro. There's no reason for this, and I've gotten a few questions about this. I have no reason for this other than I prefer semi-hydro. I find it to be easier to manage. It's neater. I think the Hoyas grow well in both semi-hydro and soil, so it's not like semi-hydro makes them grow better. I don't think so. This choice is purely personal. It's because I grow my Hoyas better in semi-hydro than I do in soil because I'm an overwaterer, and in semi-hydro it's very clear versus in soil it can be a bit less clear sometimes. So I'm going to fill this cup up with LECA, and so this is a bubble tea cup that I thought was really good quality. Like, I mean, the plastic is really good quality, and I'm like, I don't want to throw this away. And I didn't feel like recycling it, so you can even see my order. So it's going to become a cup for my Hoya. I'm going to fill it about halfway, stick this plant in, and then backfill. If you haven't watched my tutorial videos on how I transfer my rooted Hoyas into a semi-hydro LECA setup in a closed container setting, go check out my tutorial video below. One important tip I have for you that I keep saying again and again in all of my videos is to make sure that you cover your roots that you've rooted out during your propagation period with the new medium. Any root that you don't cover with the medium is going to eventually dry out, so FYI. Now I'm going to add my nutrient solution and a little bit of rapid start into the cup to help the roots out. And because the roots are already so established, I don't find the need to keep the water levels like too high. So I'm going to keep it about 1 centimeter or like less than an inch below where the roots are. And this is going to be more than enough reservoir for the plant to suck up from. So here's plant number 1. So Hoya number 2 here is our Clemenceorum Black Splash, and we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to be gently opening up the rubber lid, and we will then, again, I've made sure that this plant was kind of moist before I started this whole thing. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to give it a nice massage. You know what? I'm actually going to add a little bit more water in here just to help it, loosen up even more. So I'm gonna just keep doing this, massaging, pressing, and this also has new growth, so I'm gonna be very careful not to break that new growth, and we'll slowly pull this plant out. Perfect. So that's like a giant tube because it has so many roots, it's so dense. Now I'm gonna rinse off the fluval as much as I can. This one I think might need a little bit of a massage, because there are just so many roots in here. It's very, very dense. So, dude, I'm not even joking. Oop! Look at how much root there is. That whole thing is just root. Like, wow. Look at that. This is why I enjoy using fluval so much. So we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be slowly cutting the cap off of this plant, and I'm going to be very careful because there are like so many roots in this tube. I've been procrastinating on this video for so long and like been trying to churn out more holiday related content that I definitely neglected this tube. but no longer. Today's the day. And this plant is also out of its tube. Yay, look at that, beautiful. I'm gonna give it another rinse off so that the roots right below the cap have loosened up a little bit more before I put it in its new home. Perfect, wow, that's beautiful. So nice. Love these giant tubes. Okay, for this one, I have a new container. I just recently finished using this pasta sauce, so I have a brand new container here. And this Hoya is gonna be in this perfect new container. Reuse your containers, friends. I kind of already regret my decision using this container because I already know it's gonna be really hard to get this plant out of this container eventually because the mouth of the container is kind of narrow. Do I want to change my mind now? Okay, I'm back. You know how you're doing something and you just know that it's going to be a bad idea? I think this is going to be a bad idea because it's a glass container. There are a lot of roots, and I think if I don't move this to a wider mouth container, so compare both of these, it's going to be really hard for me to unpot this Hoya from this pot in the future. So I'm going to change tags. I'm going to be moving this from here to there. Because life's going to be a lot easier in the future. Alright, and we're all done. So I added my nutrient solution to the bottom of the pot. I think this is a much better idea than the smaller mouth container because there were just so many roots inside the container already. And my LECA balls, like this particular brand that I've got on Amazon, I'm not like in love with it and I don't hate it or anything, but the ball size is really pretty big. Like each LECA chunk is pretty big. So I think if I put it into this glass container, it's going to be next to impossible to take it out when it outgrows the container. So I've decided to put it in a plastic container instead. So this is the Hoya Clemenceorum Black Splash. Am I going to be recycling this? Probably no. I'm going to still keep it around because this is still going to be a really good tall narrow mouth container for like your aroid cutting. So if you wanted to prop like an aroid cutting or monstera cutting, like a smaller one, this would be a great container for that. Or if you have like a smaller leaf Hoya like this and the roots are a lot smaller, I think it'll be a lot easier to massage out of a pot like that than the Clemenceorum Black Splash. Okay, we are on to our very last Hoya that we'll be repotting today. This is the one, this is the Hoya flagellata in just pure perlite in a tiny tube. We're going to do the exact same thing. I've already wetted it down previously, but we're going to just give it a nice little squeeze. Perfect. So this also came out really nicely. We're going to give it a nice little rinse. So here are the roots. Are they bad? No, they're not great, but they're not bad. So I'm okay with that. So I'm going to chop this up. I mean, remove the lid. I don't know why I said chop this up. Alright, there it is. And I'm going to be repotting this into the same cup as my other Hoya flagellata. So this is my other Hoya flagellata, and I'm just going to be adding the spare LECA from this cup into the new cup. Perfect. In you go. Okay. So I'm checking out the roots of my original plant, and the roots also look great. No complaints there. So this new cutting is gonna just go straight in here, right next to the original plant. Great, and now we're gonna backfill. Hoya flagellata is an extremely slow growing Hoya. If you're looking for something that's not going to outgrow its pot quickly, this is going to be a great Hoya for you. But if you're looking for a fast-growing Hoya, this is not that Hoya. It's a really, really slow-growing Hoya, which is why I'm putting it in a much smaller cup, because it's just going to take a long time before it outgrows this cup. And I think we're going to be fine in a cup like that. So, okay, so the plant is completely in the cup, and now we're just going to add rapid start and some nutrient solution, and we're all done. Oh my god, I almost forgot. Amidst all of these things, I actually forgot that I need to repot 2 other things. So this is completely not related to my propagation tube experiment. I just have 2 plants that really, really need a repot because they're drying out so fast in fluval. But I thought it would be a good chance for me to show you how I usually root up my Hoyas. So I usually root up my Hoyas in these small shot glass tubes that you can get from any liquor store or from Amazon. And they're just in pure fluval in ambient conditions. And because the cup is completely open, these do need to get watered very frequently to keep it wet so that the roots can develop from the stem. But yeah, once you're done, oh, accidentally broke the cup. But once you're done, they do need like a new home because there's not a lot of volume in that cup. And so because of that, it dries out really easily. So here is a Hoya Matilde splash that I've been rooting out. It has amazing splashing, which is why I chopped it from the mother plant. And the roots are beautiful. For this plant, I'm going to be transferring it into a soil mix instead of like a semi-hydro mix. If you're interested in how I prepare my chunky soil mix, go check out my chunky soil mix YouTube short. I will link it down below. But it's basically the same mix that I've showed in the YouTube short, and I'm just basically potting it up in that chunky soil mix, and then we're gonna give it a nice watering to help the roots settle in, well, help the plant settle into the new pot. And this is just like a 3-inch? Yeah, I think this is a 3 or 2-inch pot that I saved from a previous purchase. And you're gonna ask me, oh, are you doing this because Hoya Matildes prefers soil over semi-hydro? No, I grow Hoya Matildes in both soil and semi-hydro, and they do equally well in both mediums. This is really just a choice. I have no special reason for this. Alright, so this is my Hoya Matilde splash completely potted up and ready to go. I will be watering this and then we'll move on to the next plant. Alright, and the last plant that we need to repot today is my Hoya latifolia silver. So as you can see, it's completely rooted up and in need of a new home. I'm going to give it a nice little squeeze. This was rooted out in a mixture of fluval and pond. Again, no special reason. It was just what I had at the time. I'm just going to give it a little shake. And then we're going to give it a little rinse off. And this has been rooting in this cup for like, I want to say more than 2 months now. And so it's very, very well rooted. It's very dense, the roots. And so because of that, it's been drying out in its cup like way more frequently than I can keep up with or that I can remember, because I tend to just ignore this because it's sitting in my seed starting prop box, so I just kind of forget about it. But yeah, look at those roots. It's amazing, beautiful roots. Looks great. So for this Hoya, I'm going to be do I want to do it in semi-hydro or soil? You know what? I already have one in semi-hydro, so I'm going to put this Hoya latifolia silver in soil. Okay, I'm back. See, I think this is like too small. But then I think this is too big. Okay, you know what? Change of plans, because I don't have the right pot size for this particular cutting. The stem is very, very long. The roots are very established, and my 4-inch pot is too short for this, and my 6-inch pot is too big for this. So, it's also too small for that. Okay, change of plans again. Couldn't find the right pot size for this plant for a soil type situation, so we're gonna go back to semi-hydro. Found a different pot with the right height for this plant that I can do semi-hydro with. So, semi-hydro it is. Okay, Hoya latifolia silver done, semi-hydro after all. And that concludes all of the giant prop tube repotting end of things. But now I'm going to move on to the second part of the video. Sorry, it's going to be really long. It is a New Year's special after all. I have collated a bunch of questions from all of the comments that you've been leaving on all of my videos and on my community page. Thank you guys so much for leaving those questions and for interacting with me. I love your comments, so keep them coming. But I've collated, how many questions are there here? 8 questions that are very commonly asked throughout all of my social media or on YouTube. And I will start with the first question. So the first question is, what grow lights do I use? I don't just use Barinas, and I also don't just use Sensi's, and I also don't really have a particular preference, I have to say. In fact, I thrifted a grow light off of off of Facebook Marketplace, and I don't even know the brand. But the point is, I have a lot of different grow lights and all of them work well. In fact, I use a lot of off brands on Amazon, and I will be talking about, or I have talked about, a lot of these grow lights and what I use, what brands they are, and I have linked all of them in my Hoya Polyneura video. So if you haven't watched my how to grow your Hoya Polyneura video, go check that video out. I talk about my grow lights. I show you a video of how I position them, and I also link all of the grow lights that I use down in the description box below of that video. So go check the how to grow your Hoya Polyneura video out, and you will get all of the information about my grow lights. But long story short, I don't have a preference. I think you should buy the grow light that matches your budget. I think that's the most important thing. And the second thing that you need to think about is, does this grow light fit in the situation that you want it to fit in? So is it like, do you need a standing grow light? Do you need something that will attach to a shelf? Like, just focus on those things and don't be too enamored by all the plant influencers saying this is the best grow light and those things. Like, I don't really think it's necessary to buy like the branded grow lights. I just think it's, well, maybe you have the money to spend, but I don't. So I don't buy expensive grow lights. I also don't buy branded grow lights. If they are on like crazy amounts of like a crazy amount of discount, I will buy them, but I'm not seeking them out, is my point. So buy a grow light on Amazon that matches what you need. What I will recommend, however, is to pay attention to like the wattage, like how bright it's gonna be, and also like buy a full spectrum one. Like, other than that, honestly, just buy any grow lights. The second question that was recently asked on one of my videos, why are my new leaves smaller than the previous leaves from the seller? So there are a couple reasons for this, but I think the main reason that you need to think about is your light conditions. So if your leaves are a lot smaller than the previous leaves from the seller, an easy way to sort out this mystery is to go talk to your seller and be like, hey man, or woman, or whatever, like, hey, what do you grow your Hoyas under? Like, what kind of lights do you use? How bright is it? Do you grow it under like a bright window or something like that? Because all of those things are going to affect how the plant behaves, because that's the original environment that it was used to. So if you bring a new cutting into your new home and the new leaves are a lot smaller than the previous leaves, your light conditions might just be a lot brighter than what this plant was previously used to. So light really does affect the look of your Hoya leaves. So titrate the light accordingly until you get the kind of leaves that you like. For me, I usually give my Hoyas medium to bright light, sometimes even low light if I want the leaves to be very big. Like for my Hoya elephant, can you see? Oh yeah, it's right here. So for my Hoya elephant over there, I give it low light, like it's in the corner of the shelf. Like most of the leaves are not even like directly under the grow light, because I want the leaves to grow really big. So if you want your leaves to be bigger, titrate the light situation, and just remember that higher light equals smaller leaves, because the plant doesn't need as much chlorophyll to absorb those light rays and photosynthesize. So higher light equals smaller leaves. If you want bigger leaves, then lower the light. But just remember that Hoyas are still, I feel, they're not like low light plants. They are still like at least medium light plants. So don't lower the light too low, because it's gonna mess with your Hoya and it's either gonna go stagnant, like stop growing, or it's gonna die. So just remember that you have like a range of light that you can titrate and play around with. But Hoyas are still plants that need light. They're not like a low light Sansevieria. They still need at least medium bright light. Hope that helps. Third question, how do you decide if something is ready to be watered? So this is a very complicated question actually, and I will break it up into 5 parts. So for me personally, what has worked for me is the Planta app. And I know this sounds like a plug, but this is not sponsored by them in any way. I just use the Planta app every single day, and it's something that has really changed my routine and has made me a better plant parent because I don't have to guess when I last watered something. I just know from my app. So I have 5 things I will say in my notebook over here, but the first thing is go download the app. The second thing is invest in a moisture meter. If you have a moisture meter, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. So for me, whenever I get a new plant, well, I don't do that so often anymore, but like in the beginning of my growing journey, I used to put a moisture meter in all of my new plants, and I would water a Hoya when it's around 3 or 4 on the moisture meter. So slightly below 50%, around 30% like wet, I guess 70% dry, I will water that Hoya. And by using that moisture meter, I can figure out the perfect amount of watering duration or duration between waterings for that particular plant. But honestly, if you don't want to use the moisture meter and you want to just use the app calculates those things for you. So if you're keen like the size of your plant, what kind of plant it is, the medium that you're using, the app actually calculates like how often you need to water the Hoya. And I have found that to be like 80 to 90% totally fine. Like sometimes the app does like calculate like an extremely long period of time that for me as an overwaterer makes me nervous. You know, it's probably fine, but like as an overwaterer, I'm like 14 days, I'm like I don't know about that. So I kind of use a combination of the app and a moisture meter, and then once I figure out like the perfect duration of time that should go between waterings, I then customize my watering schedule in the app when it is necessary. Sometimes the app gives me like totally reasonable periods of watering and I will not do anything about it and I'll just leave it as is. The other thing to know about watering schedules is that there is a difference in your watering schedule during the active growing season and the non-active growing season. So your plants are going to need to be watered a lot less in the non-active growing season that we're in right now, which is winter. So if I were to determine that my plant needed to be watered every week, so every 7 days during the active growing season, I will then stretch that time up to like 9 days or even up to 10 days in winter or during non-active growing season. But like again, this is a rule of thumb. Like this is the foundation of my watering. And here comes point 3, which is I think a lot more nebulous and more experience based. So having the app and having the moisture meter is going to give you some objective data or objective feedback on what you're doing with the plant. But as you're going through these things, I would also recommend you pot your plants in a clear pot so you can physically see what the medium looks like when it's wet versus when it's dry. So then now you have an additional data point, you have a visual cue. The second thing I want you to also think about as you're like using your moisture meter and the app is to pick up the plant. So like when you're picking up your plant and you're looking at the roots and you're looking at the substrate, also feel the weight, like kind of get a sense of like how the plant feels when it's dry versus when it's wet. And more experienced growers are going to understand exactly what I'm talking about. Like when you water a plant fully wet, it's going to feel really dense and well watered. But when it starts to dry out, when you pick up the same pot, it's going to actually feel kind of hollow. And that's usually when I know, oh, my app hasn't told me that it's time to water this plant yet, but it's feeling really light and really hollow. I think it's time to water the plant. So now you get an additional data point. So you now have the app, you have a moisture meter, you have the weight of the pot, and you also have a visual cue in the clear pot. And the last thing I want to say in this whole nebulous, touchy-feely part of plant growing is to feel your plant. Like some plants, especially the Hoya elephant, is supposed to be really hard and not soft. So if you touch your plant's leaves and they're like really mushy or soft, or they almost look like this one doesn't look wrinkly at all. I mean, it has like little peaks and valleys, but it's not wrinkled. It's like a really well hydrated leaf. But if your plant starts to look wrinkled, or like you see like little creasing in the leaf and it's soft, that's an additional data point for you to go like ding ding ding. Maybe this Hoya needs some water because it's drying out. That's why it's sucking up the moisture from the leaves. Those are like my 5 recommendations. Download the app to track your schedule, especially if you're bad at remembering things. I'm really bad at remembering things. I get distracted very easily, so I use technology to help me remember these things. Invest in a moisture meter. The moisture meter, you're probably only going to use it in like the first year of your growing journey, and then once you get a vibe or like a feel of those other things I'm talking about, which is like the look of a dry medium versus a wet medium, the weight of a dry medium versus a wet medium, and seasonality and the look of your leaves, the feel of your leaves, like those things are gonna then cue you in on when a plant needs water. And then you'll honestly stop looking for your moisture meter and start using your moisture meter because you've dialed in the duration you need for that plant in your app already. So you don't really need the moisture meter anymore. And you've also developed those like additional sensors, like visually and weight and all those things to like understand and look out for the signs of when a plant needs water. So I mentioned seasonality, right? Active growing season and non-active growing seasons. So those things are important. The other thing I also want you to think about, like you're gonna be like using this app and you're like, oh my god, you're gonna be like, oh my god, she liked me. She said the app was really reliable, and on day 9 when I'm watering my plant, it's like completely dry, blah blah blah. The other like thing about the plant growing situation is that your plant is an active growing thing, right? The longer it stays in that pot, the more roots it has, the more the same amount of medium is supporting in the total size of the plant, because your plant grows. It's not a stagnant, static thing. It keeps growing in the pot. So your duration of watering is going to change, not very dramatically or very drastically, but like the first year versus the second year, it's going to be different. Your plant is going to need to be watered more now because there's basically more leaves, more plants supported by the same container. And that's like an additional factor, and that then brings you into a different conversation about, oh my god, it's like drying out every 5 days versus 9 days, and I cannot keep up with that anymore, and it's time to repot the plant. So when you're watering things, it's not quite a science, it's an art, but there are tools that you can use to help yourself get dialed in on the right watering schedule for your plant. And then these additional things like the cues and stuff will help you then decide, maybe it's time to repot this plant, or maybe I need to water it earlier, or maybe I need to water it later because it's been very cold, or like the plant is not turning out new leaves and so it's not taking up moisture as readily. All of these things are going to help you then titrate your planter app. So for example, your planter app might trigger you today and you're like, time to water this plant. You go pick up the plant and it's really heavy, not that hollow, and you're like, well, it's winter, it's not really growing out new leaves. Then that is a cue to be like, today's not the day for watering. I'm gonna skip it on the app, and the app allows you to skip. You can like say snooze this alert for 2 days, let the plant dry out for another 2 days, and then water it again in 2 days. So all of these things are gonna factor into the watering schedule. So I'm sorry it's not like a very cut and dry advice for like when to water your plant, but there are different things you can do to help you develop those skills and knowledge when it comes to watering your plant. Do you transfer plants from soil into semi-hydro? The answer is no. I have never ever transferred a plant from soil to semi-hydro. I have transferred a plant from semi-hydro into soil because I don't think it's very stressful. But when you are trying to transfer a plant from soil into semi-hydro, it's a very stressful process for the plant because you need to wash off every single particle from the roots. They need to be bare, they need to be very clean before you then root them in semi-hydro. And that process, when you really go into the roots and aggressively mess with them, that's when the plant gets shocked. That's when the plant stops growing because it needs to recover. The roots are messed up. So personally, I have never ever, and it's not a common practice for me at all, to move a plant from soil to semi-hydro. So I don't have any great tips for you in that regard because I don't do it. How do I decide what plants to put in soil and semi-hydro? If I receive the plant in soil and the plant is happy, I am going to continue it in soil. I don't have any trouble with soil. If I receive the plant as a fresh cutting, I will root it out in semi-hydro settings and then put it into a semi-hydro setup because that's my preferred medium. But I'm not going to purposefully force a plant that has been growing well in soil into semi-hydro for no reason. Like, I don't see a point in that. I don't think everything needs to be in semi-hydro because the plants grow better in semi-hydro. I prefer semi-hydro because I like growing in semi-hydro, not because the plants grow better in semi-hydro. I think the plants grow well in both semi-hydro and also in regular soil. So the point is, make your choice depending on what kind of grower you are. If you're bad with semi-hydro, don't do semi-hydro, stick to soil. If you don't like soil, then stick to semi-hydro. And then if you have a plant that has come in soil and you want to move it into semi-hydro, there are many different videos on YouTube for that. So I'm not gonna like do it to any of my plants because I personally think it's very stressful. But if you're interested in doing that, go check out the countless numbers of like videos of influencers moving plants from soil to semi-hydro. But you must be mentally prepared that the plant is gonna stall, it's gonna go into shock for a little bit, and it might not churn out any leaves for a while because it needs to recover from that shock. Do you need to apply the Arbor Soil Boost and Rapid Start together? The answer is no. So if you've recently seen my YouTube short on my 2 recommended plant products, I highly recommend you get for 2026. And one of it is Rapid Start. The other one is the Arbor Soil Boost, which is a mycorrhizae, like root crack type situation, if you've heard that before. You don't need to use both of them. They're both really expensive products, and maybe I'm too broke. I would never use them together because I don't think it's necessary. But if you have the money, you're feeling bougie, you want to do both Rapid Start and mycorrhizae, go for it. I have not personally tried it before. I don't know if it's too much, so don't take it from me. But I do Rapid Start for my semi-hydro plants usually, and mycorrhizae for my soil-based plants, and they do just fine. And I don't think there's a need for you to like do both. But that's just my humble opinion. Do whatever you want. Next question, number 6. 2 more questions, well, 3 more, and then we are on to the end. So number 6, I don't like the look of plastic pots. That's fine. I actually have a friend. My friend hates the look of plastic pots, and everything needs to be in a cash pro, and that's fine. Just find a plastic pot that fits into a nicer decorative pot that you like, and then just do that. And then now you have both the benefits of a nice looking decorative piece of pottery and the ability to pick it up and go, oh, this is what's going on in my plant's roots. So do you have to do things in a clear pot? No. The plants don't grow better in a clear pot. The plants are going to grow whether they're in a clear pot or in a nice piece of pottery. But it does make you a better plant parent if you can check out the roots and see what's going on underneath the surface. There's a lot less guesswork when you have a clear pot. But that said, if you don't like the look of clear pots, find a decorative pot. It will work as well. The second last question is, how do you know how much water to put into the prop tubes that I just showed you? Great question. So I would break it down into 3 different phases. The first phase is when your plant has 0 roots. So when your plant has 0 roots, you don't want the medium to dry out at all. For me, I will keep the water levels really high in the tube. So I'll like basically water it all the way to the top. And then I will keep watering it every time it drops about halfway. I'll add more water into it. Basically, phase 1, during rooting, you don't want it to dry out. Once you have baby roots coming out of the plant, out of the stem, that's when you can drop the water levels from like full to like maybe half, and then you can water it every time it drops down to like a quarter. Once you have very established roots coming out and like your prop tube is just like full of roots but you're not ready to repot yet, that's when I would say water it up to about a quarter or a third of the way, and then don't water it until it's almost fully dry. So that's my watering tip for the giant prop tubes. And the last question is a non-plant related question, but I love that question so much, so I'm going to be sharing this question with you. Someone really lovely asked me and noticed that I wear different lipsticks, and she asked, what kind of lipsticks do you use? Great question, hang on. I am a long time follower of this brand. It's called Violet FR. I absolutely love everything in her line, but in particular I am obsessed with all of her lipsticks. But I have 3 different formulas here. This one is her Bisou Balm. This is a great lipstick. Oh my god, it looks really gross, but this is a great lipstick for like when you want a matte, non-highs. This is why I'm not a beauty influencer. But anyway, this Bisou Balm is great when you want like a really casual type lip and you don't want it to be highly saturated, and you also want it to be moisturizing and matte. This is a great one. And then this is her newer release, I think. This is the Lip Nectar. This is basically a lip stain, and it's a beautiful formula. I think it's really, really nice. Do you need to buy this expensive one? I think this is the only one that I would say you don't have to get from Violet. You can get it from, what's that brand called? NYX. I think NYX has like amazing lip stains. So if you want a cheaper alternative to this, the NYX would be a good one. But this, honestly, I have tried so many like matte, low saturation color balm lipsticks on the market, and this is still my favorite. So I don't think there's a replacement for this. And then I think her newest release is the Plume Lip, and these are like a moussey type lipstick. And do I think they're like very special? No, but the colors are really, really nice. And I would say it's an in-between, like it's a more saturated version of the balm is how I would put it. But it's also very lightweight, it's very easy to wear. And yeah, these are, most of the time if I'm wearing a lipstick in any of my videos, it's always a Violet FR lipstick. But I also use like other brands like Colourpop and all of those kind of stuff. But most of the time, it's probably a Violet FR lipstick because I'm obsessed. And that brings me to the end of this incredibly long video. So we've gone through the giant prop tube experiment that has concluded. Highly recommend go use those prop tubes if you're interested. We've also repotted a bunch of stuff, so I've showed you how to repot from the giant prop tubes and from a regular prop tube. And then I've also answered 8 commonly asked questions on my YouTube channel and also on my social media, I think. So that brings me to the end of today's video. I'm sorry it's super long. I hope you enjoyed today's content. Please comment, like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my videos and if you want to see more. I wish you an extremely Happy New Year. Have a wonderful 2026. I hope you achieve all the things you want to achieve, and if what you want to achieve is to achieve nothing and just be happier, then I hope you're happier in 2026. Bye!